Hello and welcome to A2IM Indie Week 2021. I'm Charlie Sanders. I'll be moderating a great panel, we hope, today entitled Indigenous American Music, Supporting a New Generation of Indigenous American Artists in the Music Area. And we are honored to have three of the best up-and-coming new songwriters and recording artists on the scene today in the United States. Who also happen to be some characterize themselves as indigenous, but we're going to let them speak for themselves. And we're going to get right to it. The panelists will introduce themselves. We have Black Belt Eagle Scout, also known as Catherine K.P. Paul, Quinn Christopherson, and Raye Zaragoza. Let me tell you a little bit about myself so you just have a feeling of who's moderating. I'm Charlie Sanders. I started out as a studio musician in the 1980s in New York and a producer. And I've spent the last 4 decades advocating for the rights of songwriters and composers. I'm counsel to the Songwriters Guild of America, to Music Creators North America, to CM, which is the International Council of Songwriters, and the Native American Music Association, including those songwriters and composers from Alaska and Hawaii. I'm former counsel to the National Music Publishers Association. I've been an NYU professor for 25 years. I founded the James Madison Project for Freedom of Information. And I'm chair of the National Music Council and former chair of Why Hunger and Artists Against Hunger and Poverty, which is one of the social outreach programs of the United States music industry. I'm proud to serve on this panel. I think it's an incredibly important issue, and we hope we'll have some really good information to share with you as creators and as also supporters of music. KP, do you want to take the first intro and talk a little bit about your career and your creative experiences and also your social justice experiences?
Sure. Hi, my name's KP, and I have a band called Black Belt Eagle Scout. First, I just want to say I'm really excited to be able to hold space with Quinn and Raye today to talk about our experiences and our lives in music. I come from more of like a community-based outlook in music, and rather than like a capitalistic outlook. And so I just want to be upfront about that, even though I think that this space probably is inherently capitalistic for the panel. But I wanted to be here and to be able to share my experience and to share a different perspective, because we're all different people. So I am from the Swinomish Indian tribal community in Northwest Washington State, and I'm also part Inupiaq from Northern Alaska on my mom's side. I'm from Swinomish on my dad's side. My parents are Kevin and Pat Paul, and here in Swinomish, my grandmother's Isabel Yakinak, my grandfather is Alexander Paul, and my great-grandmother is Lizzie Sampson, and my great-grandfather is George Alexander, and I have connection way back to when we signed the Treaty of Point Elliott, and one of my ancestors signed the treaty to create these colonial reservation boundaries where I grew up. And so I'm coming to you today from my little studio here in Swinomish. Yeah, I play music. I play in a band. I've always loved music. I've always played music. I think that, one of the reasons why I play music is to, heal myself and to help my mental health and to be able to express myself in a way that is just very meaningful to me. And I think that, doing it in a creative way and being able to have that sort of self-empowerment is really important to shaping who I am as a person. So Black Belt Eagle Scout is something that was created like 10 years ago, and it's been, at first it was sort of like on the back burner, and then I started realizing that you know, I should just do this band. This band should be something that I do. Because I was playing in a lot of bands. I was like a drummer for a couple bands, and then I was, you know, played guitar, but it was always like collaborative music, and it wasn't really music that really spoke to who I was as a person. And I think that Black Belt Eagle Scout, I wanted to be able to use this band to share a story of who I am. And, you know, at that time, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I wasn't seeing a lot of Indigenous people in, I guess, mainstream culture playing music, like besides just like a few, like, of course, like, you know, Buffy St. Marie, and then like, there's all these other bands from so-called Canada that, I don't know, I just, in my community, I wasn't seeing somebody like me. And so I wanted to be able to create this space and create some sort of community. I think at first I was maybe a little naive because I didn't realize how much within music capitalism can play a part. And I was just really into the creative part. But as I've gone through the whole process of you know, getting signed to a label, getting a booking agent, going on tour all over Turtle Island, I've realized that I do play a part in capitalism, and I need to talk more about how I can help create community and do more, I guess, helpful things because of this privilege that I'm holding. And so I guess with your question of like social justice work, I mean, I think that I definitely really care about the communities that I'm a part of, and I want to be able to, you know, use my voice or like use whatever resources I have and share them and be able to create connections with people. I think where I'm from, in particular here in Swinomish, relationships are really important, and it's really important to have like good kinships with people. And so that's where I come from, and that's what I'm kind of coming from in that intention that I've you know had to learn too, how to use that that history of myself to I guess be who I am today. So yeah.
Kip, you raise a very important point in terms of distinguishing those two tracks. One being building community and using the art form as to honor the elders and continue the traditions. If we're talking about Indigenous music and to develop yourself as a creator in general, and also the commercial side. And I think that those things, for the purposes of our discussion, can exist side by side. We can talk about the importance of both without diminishing one or the other, and I think. So that's my thought on that. Raye, you had a tremendous quote. You were working on the Standing Rock Dakota Pipeline Project and talking about that. And one of your lyrics is that hate can't be the face of the American dream, which really resonated with me and obviously millions of other people. Can you use that as a springboard talking about your own career right now?
Sure. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Raye Saragosa. It's so good to be here. I'm a huge fan of Black Belt Eagle Scout and Quinn Christopherson. So such a pleasure to be able to chat today and hold this space. For me, I'm born and raised in New York City. I grew up in the biggest city in the world. My mother is an immigrant from Japan, and my dad comes from a mixed Indigenous heritage on both sides of the border. I'm of A2IM descent and also have roots in Zacatecas, Mexico. And so being raised by an immigrant and someone of Indigenous descent has definitely shaped the way I look at the world. And my song American Dream that you referenced was kind of about both of my parents' quest for the American dream, both having faced a lot of discrimination in their own lives and coming up as, an Asian immigrant and an Indigenous man, and you know, kind of seeing how, like KP said, this like capitalistic society, American society, like really was so hard on them for a lot of their lives. And they worked so hard to put me in this incredibly privileged position I'm in now, to be able to play songs and travel and kind of comment on a lot of what I had witnessed through songs and music. And so American Dream, that was written, you know, around the time I was getting involved in traveling. I traveled to Standing Rock and getting more involved with activism and just really opening my eyes to the world around me. Truly, I was like in my early 20s at that time, and just kind of coming more to terms with my own identity as well. Coming from such a mixed racial identity, I definitely was very insecure when I was younger about just being, you know, brown in general, and just having a lot of these different mixed racial backgrounds. I felt like I couldn't identify as Indigenous, or I couldn't identify as Asian. And a lot of my music and, you know, the activism I've been involved in has also just been a lot of this reclamation of my own familial story and my own identity, and fighting for myself and those around me and my community, and really knowing who is my community and who I truly am. And yeah, so that's kind of where that song came from. And so I definitely come from a really you know, very, very incredibly Americanized upbringing, even with all of these different you know, different cultures that I grew up with different grandparents, like 4 different grandparents of very, very different backgrounds. I feel like a lot of my art and my life has been this kind of untangling and really recognizing so much that has been like what really serves me, and then what was a part of just this, like, you know, societal pressure to fit in and to forget who my family is. And so it's definitely been a long journey for me to learn more from others. And yeah, so that's me, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you, Raye. And I should mention that both KP and Raye have received incredibly flattering reviews across the industry for their work and for their art. And so has Quinn. Quinn, you got the NPR award recently, and you're in the UK now working on projects. Fill us in on what's going on with you and your philosophy.
I'm Quinn Christopherson. I am born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm Athabascan on my mother's side and Inupiaq on my dad's side. And I am a songwriter, and I feel like I'm more of a storyteller than a musician some days, and more of an artist than a guitar player other days. But yeah, I love telling stories, and it's the best way to pass them down to my nephews and nieces and my family, you know, and that's why I make music. And I did win the 2019 Tiny Desk contest for NPR, and that absolutely changed my life. I did music as a hobby before then, and now I get to make a living from it and like join the capitalism side, like KP's talking about. But yeah, it is interesting kind of coming into that world, not knowing about it or not really feeling like you belong. And yeah, it's been interesting, like in a really fast learning curve, I'd say. But I have found really good people along the way. And I think that the music industry is like every industry, you know, there's good people and there's bad people. And I think you can find your little community where you look for one. And Yeah, so now I'm in London making my debut record. When I first put my 2 songs on Spotify, um, I I thought a few people in my little Anchorage town were gonna hear them, and more people than that heard it. So I don't know, it was kind of crazy because it's such a big part of my story and my life in those 2 songs. And I didn't know I was sharing them with so many people, when I uploaded them. And so going on tour and playing them for people was really vulnerable and something I had to get used to, like it's so different just in your hometown at some dive bar playing your song, singing your heart out, and it's like you don't really think of it, and then you go and play them in a different town every night, and it's like you learn more and more about yourself every night for all the strangers you play for, and yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Thanks, Quinn, and definitely shout out to Nick Carpenter. All of you guys play with superb musicians.
Yeah.
Nick, worth checking out as a guitarist. Really good stuff. Really
Yeah,
have
he's
enjoyed
great.
listening to your music, all three of you. So now that we're better acquainted with your kind of overall philosophy of career in the music industry, and everybody has talked about community, I guess the easiest way to frame this question is to say, if you could choose where you're going to be artistically and otherwise over the next 5 years, tell us what that looks like against the background of what's going on in the world and the country in general. Not a difficult question, kid. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. In 5 years, I feel like time moves kind of slow in music world. So 5 years feels like, a little sliver of time to me. But 5 years, I think maybe I'll just still be writing songs, writing poems, maybe write a book of poetry. Just really keep writing and touring, playing shows, playing for people, put some more music out. I just love performing live. Some people don't like it, but I think it's just it's everything for me. And so I want to keep playing for people. And 5 years, yeah, I'll probably be doing that. Nothing too crazy. 10 years though, in 10 years, I'll probably have like a warehouse rented somewhere and turn it into a studio where I can get all the neighborhood kids to make beats and that sort of thing. So
Interesting and inspiring.
That sounds like a fun warehouse.
Especially that close to the.
I want to go hang out there.
Raye, how about you?
In 5 years, I mean, I guess I kind of want to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now, just with more people and more knowledge and more, listeners, and just keep growing. I don't know. I just want to keep bringing my stories and amplifying the stories of those around me to more and more people. And I think it'd be cool to have like a Raye Zaragoza, Black Belt Eagle Scout, Quinn Christopherson show at Red Rocks in 5 years. Something like that. It would be awesome.
We could make that happen.
Sounds like a good plan, I don't know. I mean, I love telling stories through music in a way also like visually. I love participating in like writing music for movies and television. And I would love to be doing more of that in 5 years, like really writing music for visual stories that I believe in and that are really opening up conversations that are, not always on screen, and really bringing more representation to film and TV. So I'd love to be doing that. And I'd love to be doing like more outreach with youth through my music. I write children's music as well, in addition to my own music. So I'd love to be growing that. And yeah, oh, I'd also love to have my own studio. So I echo the warehouse plan.
And KP?
I love that both of you want your own studios, because that's what I'm gonna have too. I love this question. I love like dreaming, and I love like looking out and like figuring out what's gonna be my future. I think it's really important, like just for me, and also as like Indigenous people, to like think about what our futures are gonna be. I think it's really important for our well-being and for our communities to like dream about things. So yeah, I mean, I'm like, I'm in this weird phase. Obviously, I think we all are, like, because of COVID is happening, and I'm trying to rethink what touring is like, and like if I want to do like so much touring, because I have done a lot and it's really tiring, it's really challenging. And I think that I want to add more intentional touring and more community-based touring. I want to do playing shows with intention, and also in an educational phrase. So I'm in this zone right now where I'm trying to think about it. But another thing that I really want to do in the future, because I'll always play music, I'm going to play music till I die, is I want to work towards becoming a producer and a recording engineer. You know, I play all the instruments on my albums. Like I write all of if you listen to everything, every single thing on my album, I play. And so I already have that, you know, vast knowledge base, and I want to take it to the next level and to be able to help other people in song creation, and also like be able to, you know, I guess like even like prove to myself that I could do a whole band, and also I could do a recording for it as well, and like put it all together. So that's what I'm working towards. I'm trying to like find some land to build a house on, and to build a recording studio in a house. And so I'm hoping to do that here in my reservation where I'm from. Probably in five years is a good timeline, but maybe it'll take a little bit longer.
Well, just my own observations, but all three of you seem to touch on two themes that are really important. The first one is using music as a teaching tool to bring the community with you as you progress in your own careers. And the second one is control over your own artistic identity and future. And the talk of a studio, I think, from all three of you as a fond and very realizable goal, has to do with both of those things. Controlling your own career, doing your own engineering, doing your own production and your own playing and your own writing. And of course, using it as a teaching tool and as a way to bring the community together. As Quinn said, bringing in kids to, you know, invent some beats and do that, using it as an introductory tool to them to follow you into the industry. How are we going to make that happen in an easier way for you guys as members of the industry? If you were going to address the industry and say, here's where we need help, here's where we'd like to see you guys respect us more and pay more attention to us, what does that look like?
I would say start by hiring more Indigenous people, because we are always constantly putting ourselves up, you know, like, you know, helping ourselves and that sort of thing. And so I feel like when there's not enough representation in these communities that are often like have a lot of gatekeepers and stuff, I feel like that we could all benefit from that.
Okay. KP, Raye?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry. Go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, I think that's really important to be able to provide jobs to Indigenous people. You know, I think about like our society and like just like I don't know, like what was it, like 40, 50 years ago, like you know, Indigenous, there in some parts of this country, Indigenous people like couldn't like buy houses, they couldn't like, you know, like own property, and so like there's a lot of like I think catch up that I'm finding myself in particular doing within like this capitalistic society, because it is, you know, we use money to like buy things, you know, we have jobs, and so one of the things that I like think about sometimes is like reparations and like trying to make things easier for us, because it's like we've been held back so much. And so like I think that yeah, like people should, you know, give us more things. Like I think that like people should give us, you know, this, you know, land back, and then like be able to like steward it in certain ways, which is important to our community. And I think, I don't know, like I think that yeah, I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but I think that there could be more resources offered to us, especially because there's a lot of resources have been taken away.
I completely agree. I think like super like tangibly, like some small things like for everyone who's like listening, you know, I mean, I remember just like kind of surfing through even like things that can really help an artist's career. Like, for example, like being on like a Spotify playlist, or like things that are like curated by these really big entities that are really building people's careers. Like be very intentional and think about if you're building a playlist or you're building a database or you're amping up artists, think about, are there any artists of underrepresented groups like Indigenous people who I could feature on this thing? Because that little act that can really help out artists from underrepresented groups that are not always featured and lifted and put in the spotlight. You know, if you're looking for music for your TV show or your movie or your playlist or your mailing list or your anything, it's like, sure, you could like listen to the 10 artists that are always featured on the radio, or like the things that are just in your face, or you can do some more due diligence and really search if maybe there's some stories that are being told by artists that I don't hear about every single day that I could feature. I feel like those little things can make a huge difference. And I think that, you know, we were kind of touching on this before we started recording, but in all genres of music, there are, I don't know, I think like even for me as like a folk musician at Folk Alliance, we always are thinking about, you know, the folk Americana genre being so much more than we actually think it is. And like I write a lot of lyrics that are very like critical of American culture and American society, and yet I would still play Americana music festivals, or I want to play Americana music festivals. And sometimes it's like kind of broadening our minds of like what, you know, what stories, like what is folk music, what is Americana? It actually encompasses so much more and so many more storytellers and so many more underrepresented groups that we need to be like lifting and putting in the spotlight. And so yeah, I don't know. I think that I think it's just if you hold some kind of gate, think about underrepresented groups and Indigenous people that you could be letting in and featuring and putting the spotlight on.
Yeah, I think the three of you have just demonstrated the incredible value of the think tank scenario of really, you know, gaming this out and figuring out what the best way to go is. Can you guys visualize an organization being formed to carry, or whose role it would be to try to carry out some of these goals and these good ideas?
I think there are already a lot of incredible organizations led by Indigenous people, like Return to the Heart Foundation is one that I've worked with a lot. And Sarah Eaglehart, she's someone who she serves on the board of like the Women's March and a lot of boards, and she's doing incredible work. And I think sometimes it's like, instead of thinking about what we can build, it's like look to the people who are already doing it and who are doing an amazing job, and maybe give you know, I'm always saying, like, especially as an artist that comes from an Indigenous ancestry, and I'm, like I said, I'm still learning, and there's so much knowledge I don't know even about my own like my own background on all sides of my family that I'm still learning. And sometimes I'm brought into spaces where it's like, oh, do they want me to be a consultant or a performer, you know? And I think that if there are festivals or things, and they want a resource of like how to do better, look to these organizations and pay them for their consulting, or, you know, how can we collaborate? How can I bring you on our board and compensate you? And yeah, so I think sometimes there's always that instinct of like, what can we build to help, when it's like, oh wait, no, there's actually a lot of Indigenous people already doing it and doing a great job. Let's like,
Raise them up.
Yeah, raise them up and compensate them to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think that, you know, that was the sort of mentality when I started music. I was like, oh, I should start music so that more people can do it. But then, you know, finding that, oh, there are a lot of people already like playing music. Like, there are Indigenous people in bands. And I agree with that. I mean, one of my friends, Erin, who is a part of this organization called Seeding Sovereignty, has helped some of my, I guess, just like friends in the music community, you know, learn how to properly like talk about the lands that they're on when they go and they tour, and like identifying and naming like what lands that they're visiting, like and so there's all of these, you know, there's a lot of, I think, Indigenous people and orgs that are already doing that work, definitely. And I think it just takes some research and Googling to find it.
Do you think it's specific enough to the inner workings of the music community to serve your needs, though, in realizing your own dreams? Or do we need to beef that up and have something specific to the music community as a way to talk about some of the economic advantages that can be realized through these programs you've suggested?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends like what kind of music community you're talking about, because I feel like for me, and maybe like Raye and Quinn, like I feel like we're sort of like going like walking within like this sort of like indie type of like community, and it's not like totally like our like this other band like Portugal the Man, who like is signed by this like major label and like kind of walks around in that space. And so I mean, I don't know, like you're talking to us that are in this certain kind of space. Do you all have anything to add to like the space that we're in currently in that question?
Yeah, that's a good point about, you know, our shows versus Portugal the Man's shows. And they are a good example of white people kind of like really trying to make every space they enter an Indigenous space. And they do that by every town they play, they get the local Indigenous people there to do the land acknowledgement. And yes, they could say their own land acknowledgement before their show, but a really good point is that they have someone else do it, the people who live there, and they put money in their pockets. And that's another part of acknowledging the land, is also acknowledging the people. And like, you know, they're going to come here and make money off this show, but they're going to pay money else out, you know, and like, that's a great, to me, that's a really good way for non-Indigenous people to make spaces feel safer for Indigenous people.
Yeah, I think that like land acknowledgements are like really kind of popular thing within music community, at least within like my music community. And I think that there is like definitely a good way to go about doing them rather than just like say, here's the land that we're on and not offer anything. I think it's like that idea of like, you know, inviting people in and creating a community and actually giving resources to the folks of the lands. I think that's really important.
This is a difficult but related question, but do you feel as though the better you are able to do economically through the channels that are used by all recording artists and songwriters in the industry, will that give you greater empowerment to move these ideas forward?
I think that with like financial resources and, you know, doing the better you do, we would do economically. It's like, yes, it's kind of like what we were saying with the, like what Quinn was saying with the land acknowledgements and having the locals, you know, and then compensating them for it. You know, like you can, it's like the more you bring in, the more you can bring out, you know, and the more of a platform you have, the more people you can be in front of and speak your truth. And maybe it's a truth that is not commonly spoken in front of that many people. And so absolutely, I think that with like that material success that oftentimes is like kind of cringy of like, you know, that is inherently a part of like being a music artist and like amplifying your voice, is it's like, yes, it's like we want to succeed so we can like bring in more, so we can bring out more, you know. And so so yeah, I don't know, that's my thought.
Quinn, you look like you had something to add to that.
Oh,
Well, I mean, for example, you truly, and I think you did a TED talk that I mean, you certainly did that in a very seamless, passionate way. Is there a way that you might have gone a step further in terms of following up on KP's idea of making sure that the money is flowing through to those peoples? Is that something that we need to be more aggressive about?
I mean, if we're just talking about land acknowledgement specifically, yeah, I think just stating the land you're on is becoming a little more like trendy rather than impactful, and that's why I think it's important for you not to speak it, but for you to hear it from the locals, you know. So just in that way, and yeah, you need to pay people for their time and their art, you know, whatever that is.
We have 5 minutes left. I just wanted to say.
Yeah. So final thoughts. You know, my final thoughts are clearly there are way more reasons to have the Indigenous community frame the way forward for itself and to direct how it goes. There are folks out there certainly willing to help in the music sphere in terms of taking advantage of the rules and structures that are in existence in order to direct the flow of money. My takeaway from this is that I need to work harder on getting involved in doing that. What would you guys like to see, you know, as your final thoughts of where we go from here after what I consider to be a very good and enlightening discussion from the people who are actually doing it, the three of you?
I would say as if I were talking to my nephew and he's an artist, I would say, don't ever focus on the money. Tell your story and write your words, because those are something that nobody can take from you. And no one's been able to take my words from me. And so that's why I keep writing. And it has nothing to do with money.
Yeah, I think along those lines too, like I've been thinking a lot just about being here on the earth and like we're only here for so long, and it's like what we do when we're here really, you know, can matter, and to take that into account of like, you know, trying to live your life in that good way. And so yeah, I've been falling into this like intention of you know, trying to be more intentional on things. So I think that's what I would say is like, that's a good path to follow.
Yeah, I guess my last thoughts are like, I agree, and I think that it's yeah, at the end of the day, it's always about the stories and your truth, and having that, you know, see through all of the kind of like business around it is like the key, I think, for me to remain happy and feel fulfilled as an artist. And that yeah, and you know, to any of the industry folks who are listening, like I hope you'll like reach out to all of us as artists and consider really spotlighting artists of Indigenous communities. And yeah, so it's been a great honor to talk with all of you.
It's been my honor to listen. And I think that the three of you are great teachers, as well as artists, and I'm certainly hopeful and fully expect that you will continue to do that over the years. And I look forward to working with you. And I hope we can continue this conversation long after this panel is done. And I want to thank A2IM for putting us together and putting this program together. Extremely valuable to anyone who's watching, and expanding the scope of knowledge that we have about where we should be assisting our creators as we move into the 2020s. So thank you all.
Thank
and
you.
Good luck to all of you. And please stay in touch with all of us.
Thank you.